She assumed he was just another human prisoner, until Fury awoke something unimaginable. Beneath the storm-scarred surface of Aegir 7, the hidden research complex pulsed with alien energy, emerald and gold lights flickering over obsidian walls. Acidic winds howled far above, a distant memory in the underground hush, but deep below, Commander Lyra moved through her laboratory with a predator's calm. Her skin, a deep mossy green, caught the shifting illumination, highlighting the sinuous muscle beneath. Braided locks of fiery red, threaded with glinting metal beads and bands, cascaded over her armored shoulders, framing a face both severe and striking. Amber eyes, slit and sharp, flicked from data streams to her crew with a silent command. Intricate ceremonial markings swirled over her exposed arms, glyphs of heritage and history, visible beneath the black and gold plates of her combat armor. She stood before a massive console, fingers dancing across the surface as alien glyphs scrolled and spiraled in the air. The laboratory thrummed with energy, the low hum of advanced machinery mixing with the pulse of something older, almost primal. "Retrieve specimen 12, she ordered, her voice cutting through the electronic haze. Moments later, the heavy doors hissed open. Two guards in matte black armor marched in, hauling between them a man whose presence seemed to disrupt the laboratory's order. Evan's wrists were encased in shimmering restraint bands that threw glints of blue and gold across the floor. He had been a captive for days. His skin was pale beneath the grime, his jaw unshaven, but his posture remained unbroken. Blue eyes, steady and unwavering, met Lyra's gaze with a defiance that made her lips press into a thin line. "Set him here," Lyra commanded. The guards secured Evan to a standing harness at the center of the chamber. As they stepped back, Lyra circled him with a measured grace, her armor's golden filigree catching the flickering lights. The air between them crackled with something almost electric. She paused, fingers brushing his forearm. Strong, calloused, and unmistakably human. The contact left a strange warmth in its wake, a sensation she refused to acknowledge. "Your kind is remarkably persistent," she said, activating the harness with a gesture. Alien machinery hissed and shifted, stretching Evan's arms just short of pain. Most would have yielded by now. Evan's breath hitched, but he held her gaze, unblinking. "Maybe you haven't met the right kind." Lyra's eyes narrowed, intrigued despite herself. "But you, what keeps you fighting?" Her tone was clinical, but something softer lurked beneath. A lattice of sensors descended from the ceiling, spider-like and delicate, each node glowing with alien light. Evan's field operative training took hold. He slowed his breathing, focusing inward as the sensors began their work. Sharp, cold lines of pain flickered along his nerves as energy pulsed through him, reading, measuring, probing. He gritted his teeth, refusing to give Lyra the satisfaction of a scream. Lyra watched the data scroll across her console, brow furrowing. "His neural patterns. Look at these readings," she called to a nearby scientist, but her focus remained on Evan. His physiology was flagged as anomalous, a puzzle her team had failed to solve. "Most humans register high stress responses by this stage," her assistant noted, voice tinged with awe. Lyra tilted her head, stepping closer. "He's different," she murmured, not entirely to herself. Evan's shoulders tensed, sweat beading at his temples, but his eyes, icy, fierce, unyielding, never left hers. For a moment, Lyra felt a twist of something unsettling, a spark of empathy she tried to smother. "Enough," she said abruptly, voice sharper than she intended. The restraints disengaged with a hiss, letting Evan sag against the harness. He drew a ragged breath, muscles trembling, but still, he stood, defiant. Lyra's hand hovered near his face, fingers brushing his cheek almost involuntarily. The gesture startled them both. A breach of distance neither could explain. "We're not finished," she murmured, her voice a velvet threat as much as a promise. The guards took Evan by the arms, guiding him out of the laboratory. Lyra watched him go, her amber gaze following every movement, caught between the obligations of her command and the curiosity gnawing at her core. That night, the complex slept uneasily, geothermal currents humming beneath the floors. Lyra sat alone in her quarters, data streaming across her screens, but she found herself unable to focus. The image of Evan, his resilience, his eyes, haunted her. Against every protocol and instinct she rose, donning only a simple black tunic beneath her cloak, and made her way to the holding cells. The corridors were silent but alive with energy. At the entrance to the cell block, Lyra nodded to the guard on duty, who snapped to attention but did not question her. She keyed in her authorization, the heavy door sliding open with a hydraulic sigh. Inside, the holding area glowed with the soft blue of containment fields. Evan sat cross-legged on the low cot, head bowed, hands resting lightly in his lap. He looked up as she entered, his gaze sharp despite exhaustion. She lingered in the doorway for a heartbeat, then stepped inside, the door hissing shut behind her. "Specimen 12, she began, then caught herself. "Evan." He raised an eyebrow, a hint of wry amusement flickering across his lips. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Lyra kept her posture rigid, fighting to hold on to her authority. "Your biology is unlike any we've encountered. The readings, your endurance, your neural responses, none of it fits our models." Evan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Maybe your science is incomplete." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Lyra drew closer, compelled by the tension in the air, the way her heart pounded in her chest. "Why do you resist?" Evan asked, voice low. She hesitated, the answer heavy on her tongue. "Because I must prove our supremacy," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Even as I find you compelling." The distance between them disappeared, their faces close, breaths mingling in the charged air. Lyra's pheromones swirled invisibly, a heady alien musk that seemed to vibrate in Evan's blood. He felt a rush of sensation, a dangerous clarity. "What if you're wrong?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breath. Lyra's lips parted, caught between response and confession. Before she could speak, the klaxon blared, a shrill, echoing alarm that shattered the moment. The lights flashed crimson as a breach warning rolled through the complex. Lyra stepped back, shaken, her amber eyes wide with conflict. The boundary between captor and captive had vanished, replaced by something perilous, irresistible. A connection neither could deny, though the world outside threatened to tear it apart. After several days, Lyra returned to Evan's cell. Her hands, usually so steady and sure, trembled as she keyed in the access code. The thick door slid open, revealing the stark interior and the man who haunted her thoughts. Evan looked up from his cot, blue eyes watchful, a question hovering on his lips. Lyra hesitated in the threshold, clutching a slim metallic case, its surface etched with alien glyphs. She forced herself to move forward, boots echoing against the polished floor. "You're being transferred to the central chamber for a cognitive assessment," she said, voice clipped, though it could not conceal the tremor beneath. Guards escorted Evan through sterile corridors, but Lyra dismissed them once inside the lab. Now alone, surrounded by the pulsing emerald light and obsidian walls, she faced him. No longer captor and captive, but something undefined. Lyra set the case on the table and flipped it open. Inside rested a neural synchronizer, delicate filaments fanned from a central node thrumming with dormant power. She lifted it, her green fingers shaking as she approached Evan. "This device will monitor your mind under stress," she explained. "It requires direct contact." He sat on the edge of the examination table, shirtless beneath the harsh lights. Lyra stepped close, so near she could feel his heat. Her hands, cool and gentle, pressed the synchronizer to his temples, chest, and wrists. The subtle patterns on her arms shimmered, catching the gold highlights as her touch lingered longer than necessary. Her breath caught. "Your pulse is elevated," she murmured, amber eyes flicking to the readout, then back to his face. "Nerves? Or something else?" Evan's voice was a low thrum, intimate as a secret. "Maybe it's you." She tried to focus on calibrating the device, but his words sent a ripple through her. The synchronizer's filaments pressed against his skin, feeding data into the console behind her. She pressed a control. Luminous arcs of energy danced over his body. "Try to relax," she managed, though her own heart raced. "This will only take a moment." The machine hummed, and Lyra watched the neural waves on the display. Something was wrong. No, not wrong. Extraordinary. The neural signature, once only Evan's, began to resonate with her own. Her pulse spiked as she realized the device was picking up her brainwaves too, feeding them into the same stream. Their frequencies began to align, the two patterns weaving together in a rhythm neither biology nor science could predict. "Astonishing," Lyra breathed, fingers hovering over the console, but her focus was no longer on the data. Her gaze found Evan's, searching, hungry. Evan reached for her, his hand rising with slow, deliberate intent. His thumb traced the elegant lines of her jaw, brushing the edge of one ceremonial marking. The air between them charged, luminous with possibility. "Lyra," he whispered, her name a secret that tasted dangerous and sweet. The world contracted to the space between them. Lyra's hands gripped his shoulders, armor cool against his bare skin. Their lips met, urgent and hungry, weeks of tension erupting in a collision of desire. She tasted the salt of his skin, the heat of his breath. He pulled her closer, her armored form pressing into his body, the gold trim cold and smooth against his flesh. The synchronizer's lights flickered, readings spiking into chaos. Sparks danced from the filaments, but neither cared. Lyra's braids tumbled forward, red and metal and wild, as she lost herself in the moment. Evan's hands roamed her back, feeling the shift and flex of muscle beneath her armor. They broke for air, foreheads pressed together, sharing the same desperate gasp. The machine's hum turned to a shriek. The readout snapped, a pop of ozone filling the room as the neural device overloaded and shorted out, falling silent. Lyra laughed, breathless, the sound low and rich. They tumbled together onto the examination table, a tangle of limbs and armor and want. Later, when the storm of passion ebbed, they lay entwined in the hush that followed. Lyra propped herself on one elbow, tracing the scars and old wounds scattered across Evan's chest. Her fingers were gentle, reverent. "If anyone discovers this, we're finished," she whispered, voice trembling with fear and awe. Evan slid his hand along her side, anchoring her close. "Then we'll make sure they don't," he said. And in his eyes she saw defiance, hope, and something deeper, a promise. But even as they clung to each other, something had shifted. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her blood, a restlessness beneath her skin. She studied Evan. His eyes seemed brighter, gold flickering in the blue, and subtle patterns, not unlike her own, shimmered just beneath his skin. Their bond had set something profound in motion, a resonance neither could have foreseen. The next morning, the spell of secrecy broke. Dr. Rin, the chief bioanalyst, swept into the lab with a team of assistants. Rin's silver hair was pulled tight, his violet eyes sharp as he scanned the chamber. He gestured briskly. "Prepare the subject for comparative analysis." Lyra schooled her features, suppressing the memory of the night before. She nodded to the guards who fitted Evan with restraint bands once more, pinning him to the table beneath the overhead sensors. She stood apart, arms folded, struggling to maintain the mask of command. Rin examined the data pads, glancing between Evan and the readings. "Your human shows unusual adaptation," he observed, tapping the screen. "Especially specimen 12. His neural patterns are evolving. Synaptic density is up nearly 50% since last week." Lyra forced herself to reply. "He survived the last round of testing. I propose new psychological trials." Rin nodded, activating the machine. A projection field shimmered to life above Evan's head, images forming in the haze. Evan gritted his teeth as the device probed his mind, searching for fear, weakness. The visions came hard and fast. Earth in ruins, burning under alien skies. His squadmates, faces he knew and loved, cut down by plasma fire. And Lyra, her eyes cold, voice a weapon, leading the assault, her armor dripping with human blood. Evan writhed, sweat beading on his brow. The neural readings spiked, patterns twisting and reforming. The gold in his eyes blazed, and strange markings, like those on Lyra's arms, began to emerge along his skin, luminous and shifting. "Impressive response," Rin intoned, awe creeping into his clinical tone. "His physiology is changing in real time." Evan's muscles thickened, bones cracking, reshaping. The restraints groaned, the metal protesting his new strength. "Stop!" Lyra shouted, shoving past an assistant. "He's had enough." But Rin shook his head. "We must see the limits of this adaptation, continue the test." The machine drove deeper, images more brutal. Evan's breath came in ragged gasps, body convulsing as his hands twisted, claws forming where fingers had been. The restraint snapped with a metallic shriek, bolts scattering across the floor. Evan surged up from the table, energy radiating from him in waves. Rin staggered back, nearly trampled as Evan shook free, wild and transformed. For a heartbeat, Evan's gaze was pure fury, gold blazing where blue had been. His chest heaved, muscles straining, veins bright beneath skin etched in shifting patterns. Lyra stepped in front of the cowering analysts. "Evan!" she called, voice pleading and raw. "Come back to me." Evan's clawed hand trembled in the air, the battle raging behind his eyes. For an instant, the gold flickered, blue returning. Recognition, love, the memory of her lips and the warmth of her touch. He reached out, claws gentle against her cheek, the gesture impossibly tender. "Lyra," he rasped, the word almost lost in the roar of approaching sirens. Security klaxons wailed, red lights strobing through the lab. The guards stormed the corridor, but Lyra stood her ground, caught between her oath to her people and the bond that now tied her irrevocably to Evan. His transformation had revealed a hidden human potential, and Lyra knew, as the alarms blared and chaos descended, that the choice she made next would change everything. Blast doors slammed shut with a thunderous clang, echoing through the fractured depths of the research complex as Evan's transformation reached its apex. His body convulsed, limbs elongating, muscles swelling with a power that was both alien and achingly familiar. The skin along his arms and chest rippled from pale human to a striking blue-green, and bioluminescent lines flared to life, tracing his sinews in living light. He surged upward, growing until he filled the chamber, nearly 8 feet tall. Yet when his gaze fell on Lyra, the gentle warmth in his eyes defied the monstrous new shape. The entire complex trembled, machinery groaning in protest as the unstable crust of Aegir 7 responded to the wild surge of energy. Alarms shrieked, red strobes casting frantic shadows along the obsidian walls. Lyra stood frozen, torn between awe and terror, as debris rained from the ceiling. Then Evan reached for her, hands massive but impossibly careful, lifting her against his chest. She gasped, instinctively clutching his shoulders, her own ceremonial markings erupting in light that answered the glow beneath his skin. Evan! Lyra's voice caught as the world seemed to tilt beneath them. The escape route is blocked. She glanced over his shoulder, watching as another section of corridor caved in, stone and metal twisted together. Her tail, usually a subtle extension of her spine, flicked out in panic, now fully prehensile. It looped instinctively around Evan's forearm, seeking security. He steadied her with a low, resonant growl, rumbling deep in his chest, a sound more felt than heard. Through the wild thrum of their new psychic link, a promise echoed, "I will keep you safe." With a single, earth-shaking motion, Evan charged forward. Barriers shattered before him, steel crumpling like foil, reinforced glass splintering at a touch. Automated defenses deployed, turrets spinning and spitting plasma, but his reflexes blurred into something inhuman. He shielded Lyra with his body, absorbing the onslaught, and swept the machines aside with effortless sweeps of his claws. Sparks and debris rained around them, but Evan's stride never faltered. In the chaos behind, Dr. Rin staggered to his feet. His lab coat was torn, blood streaking his forehead, but his eyes, wide and shining, were locked on Evan's retreating form. He fumbled for his datapad, voice trembling. This changes everything. Humanity's capacity for rapid evolution. But his words were lost in the roar of collapsing walls. Evan pressed onward, weaving through mangled corridors. With every step, the complex shuddered more violently, the unstable geology threatening to bury them alive. Lyra pressed close, her breath hot against his throat, markings pulsing with a resonance that matched his own. At last, they reached the outer vault, a massive barrier of alloyed stone and energy fields. Evan hesitated, muscles bunching as he prepared to break through. Lyra touched his face, her small green hand gentle against the strange contours of his new jaw. The bioluminescence dimmed under her touch, his monstrous features softening. "Together," she whispered, her voice a thread of hope binding them in the darkness. He nuzzled her palm, the gesture both animal and achingly human. Gathering his strength, he smashed through the vault doors in an explosion of light and sound, carrying Lyra into the ancient magma tunnels beyond the facility. They descended into the world beneath Agir 7, guided by senses that now belonged to both of them. Evan's altered vision picked out safe paths through the labyrinth, tracing heat and energy like a living map. Lyra clung to him, her tail tightening as the tunnels narrowed, then widened into a vast, hidden cavern. Crystalline growths jutted from the walls and ceiling, their radiant colors shielding the chamber from all sensors above. Evan slowed, setting Lyra gently on a shelf of smooth black stone. The air was warm, fragrant with minerals. The crystals pulsed softly, casting rainbows across the darkness, their glow harmonizing with the light rippling over Evan's skin and Lyra's ceremonial markings. For a moment, they simply stood in silence, the adrenaline of escape fading into something more fragile. Lyra stepped closer, studying him, her eyes both scientific and tender. She reached up, fingers trembling, and traced the bioluminescent lines along his cheek, over his brow, down the ridged column of his neck. "Are you still yourself?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Evan's mouth worked, but he could not form words. Instead, their psychic bond vibrated with meaning. Images, emotions, memories. He showed her fragments of his past. Laughter beneath Terran skies, the desperate hope of resistance, the moment her touch changed everything. Through the link, she felt his certainty. I am more myself than I have ever been, and you are part of that truth. Lyra's breath shuddered out, relief and longing entwined. Show me, she whispered, a plea and a command. He drew her to him, the heat of his body mingling with hers. Their lips met, awkward at first, then hungry, urgent. Lyra pressed against him, armor discarded, ceremonial patterns blazing. Evan's hands traced her spine, feeling the living pulse beneath her skin. The cavern erupted in light as their bodies joined, bioluminescent lines and swirling glyphs igniting in a riot of color. The crystals above reflected the spectacle, casting a dance of shifting hues over stone and flesh. Every motion, every caress, wove new patterns across their bodies, the union of human and alien transforming the very air. Their minds fused in a rush of sensation, fear, joy, sorrow, hope, until there was no boundary left between them. Afterward, they lay entwined on the smooth rock, breath mingling, hearts still racing. Lyra propped herself on one elbow, her fingertips tracing the new ridges along Evan's spine, structures that had not been there before, delicate but strong. She marveled at the transformation, her scientist's curiosity wrestling with a lover's awe. Your evolution isn't finished, she murmured, watching the light ripple beneath his skin. This is only the beginning. Evan's hand cupped her cheek, and through their bond a surge of images, visions of others changing, barriers falling, a future where difference was a source of strength. Lyra smiled, tears brightening her amber eyes. We can be the bridge, she said softly. We can prove to them all that evolution can unite, not destroy. He pulled her close, his embrace fierce and gentle. The world above remained uncertain, but in the hidden sanctuary of crystal and fire, Lyra and Evan resolved, together, to become the promise of what could be. When Evan and Lyra emerged from the magma tunnels into the detention level, the world exploded into chaos. Alarms pulsed in red and gold, the walls vibrating with the clamor of panicked shouts, the pounding of boots, the metallic clatter of security droids rushing to contain an uprising that had not yet begun, but was now inevitable. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and fear. Jonah Voss, the resistance leader, stood at the center of the cell block, ringed by a ragged group of human prisoners. The lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face, but his eyes blazed with defiance. He froze when he saw Evan, no longer simply the field operative he had known, but transformed, towering, blue-green and marked by bioluminescence. Lyra's ceremonial patterns glowed at her side, her presence equally impossible. Jonah's voice faltered, then steadied, awe and disbelief warring in his tone. It's true, he murmured, voice carrying through the cell block like a spark in dry grass. Lyra swept forward, her posture regal and unyielding, her amber gaze commanding silence. She drew herself up before the security terminal, hands dancing over the controls with swift precision. Her alien code flared on the interface, bypassing biometric locks and encrypted gates. Everyone, stand back, she ordered, her voice ringing with authority. Locks disengaged with a series of thunderous clicks. Steel doors slid open all along the corridor, releasing hundreds of human captives. Some stumbled out, blinking in disbelief, faces gaunt from captivity. Others pressed themselves back against the walls, recoiling at the sight of Evan's new form, alien and immense, eyes aglow with a strange light. A hush rippled through the crowd. Evan stood, backlit by the flicker of failing overhead lights, his bioluminescent lines shifting in rhythm with his breath. Lyra stepped to his side, head held high, defying both her own people and the fear in the eyes around her. Priya Singh, the medic with cropped black hair and steady hands, moved through the crowd. She paused before Evan, her gaze searching his face, then his eyes. "He's still one of us, I can see it," she said, her voice firm. She placed a hand on his arm, unafraid, and some of the tension ebbed from the room. Jonah nodded, stepping forward to clasp Evan's shoulder. "We need you," he said, a leader's plea and a friend's trust interwoven. A warning blared. Alien guards poured into the cell block, weapons raised, armor gleaming. The lead officer barked orders in the guttural alien tongue, gesturing for Lyra to surrender. She turned to face them, unflinching. "He's proof we were wrong," Lyra declared, her words echoing down the corridor. "You see with your own eyes? Humanity can change, adapt. The experiment is over." The guards hesitated. Some looked to their commander, Soren, tall, imposing, scales dull in the harsh lights. Soren raised his plasma rifle, eyes narrowing at Evan. The moment stretched, breathless. Evan stepped forward, a blur of motion. He moved with impossible speed, arms a blue-green arc as he wrenched weapons from alien hands, disabling them with a precision that left no wounds, only stunned disbelief. A rifle clattered to the floor, power pack hissing. Evan faced Soren, shoulders squared, every line of his body both a threat and a plea. He spoke in the alien tongue, voice low but resonant. "Decide." Soren stared at him, something shifting in his gaze. The weapon dipped, uncertainty replacing aggression. Then, slowly, Soren lowered his rifle and stepped aside. Others followed, confusion and respect mingling on their faces. A surge of hope swept through the humans. Lyra wasted no time. "This way!" she shouted, taking command of the exodus. With a gesture, she led the surge of prisoners down the corridor, Evan clearing obstacles with brute strength and careful hands. Some captives still flinched from him, but others reached for his guidance, especially as the route grew more dangerous. As they moved, familiar faces emerged from the throng. Dr. Lee, the biologist, white coat streaked with grime, hurried to Evan's side, pressing a battered tablet into his palm. "We've got data on more captives," Lee gasped. "Other facilities, scattered across Eager 7. Ramirez, the engineer, called from a shattered service shaft. "This way. Secondary access to the surface. We'll need muscle and tech to cut through the maglocks." Evan nodded, the psychic link with Lyra sharpening his senses. He could feel the presence of other prisoners beyond these walls, echoes of minds desperate for freedom. Their rebellion was no longer an isolated spark, but the first blaze of an inferno. They reached the final barrier, an armored door sealed tight. Ramirez and Dr. Lee set to work, splicing wires, rerouting circuits. "We need another minute," Ramirez called. Evan pressed his scaled hand to the door, feeling the vibration of the locking mechanism, the tremor of pursuing guards behind. He focused, channeling the energy that still thrummed in his altered form, bioluminescent lines flaring as he forced the system to overload. With a resounding clang, the door shuddered open. Sunlight spilled down the corridor, dazzling after so long in the artificial gloom. The group surged forward, a tide of hope and fear and determination. Above, the planet's wind howled, acidic but bracing, a promise of something new. Lyra paused, glancing over her shoulder at the facility now behind them, the walls where she had once commanded and now was condemned as a traitor. She drew a communicator from her belt, fingers trembling but resolute. To the ruling directorate, she transmitted in a clear, unwavering voice. "This is Commander Lyra, former security chief of Outpost 6. We have discovered something that changes everything. Humanity is not what you believed. Neither are we." The line crackled with static, voices shouting, demands and threats in a dozen dialects. Lyra ignored them. Evan's scaled hand settled on her shoulder, his touch both anchor and promise. She met his gaze, the bond between them a silent vow. The humans, Priya, Jonah, Dr. Lee, Ramirez, and the hundreds they had freed, gathered behind them. Alien guards, some wavering, others resolute, watched as Lyra, now an outcast, led the way into the unknown. The revolution had begun, not with bloodshed, but with the quiet, unstoppable force of transformation, one that could not be contained. As they crossed into the harsh light of Aegir 7's surface, Evan and Lyra walked side by side, leading the exodus, and behind them, a new world waited to be born. The Directorate's crystalline council chamber was thrown into uproar by Lyra's summons. Shards of light played across vaulted walls of violet quartz, refracting the projections cast above the central dais. At the heart of the chaos stood Elder Myros, his face a map of ancient scars, each one earned in battles most present could only recall from the archives. He stared unblinking at the colossal image projected before them. Evan, unmistakably human at his core, but transformed, towering, blue-green, etched in living light. Myros, look at those readings, Dr. Talon said, voice tight as she swept her hand through the swirling holographic data. Still human at the core, but transformed beyond natural means. We have never recorded adaptation on this scale. The council chamber's atmosphere grew charged, counselors murmuring, some in fear, others in fascination. Crystalline benches vibrated with the rising energy of their debate. The doors slid open with a resonant chime. Lyra entered, every inch the dignified commander, ceremonial markings on her arms glowing with purpose. Behind her came Evan, so vast he had to duck beneath the archway, his bioluminescent form casting shifting blue and gold shadows on the floor. The chamber fell silent as he moved, every step deliberate, his presence both alien and noble. Lyra's voice rang clear as crystal as she faced the council. I present Evan of Earth, the first of our synthesis. The silence shattered. Counselors leaped to their feet, voices overlapping in a cacophony of accusation and disbelief. Abomination! Cried Counselor Ra, scales bristling with outrage. This is a perversion of our science and their flesh. Evan lifted his chin, regarding the assembly. When he spoke, his voice resonated in layered harmonics, the alien and human elements interwoven into a sound that trembled the crystal pillars. This is what we could achieve together. You see fear, but I offer possibility. Lyra stepped closer, her amber eyes fierce. Human adaptability, alien science. Together, we are more. This war has shown us the limits of division. Evan is living proof that synthesis is not only possible, but powerful. Counselor Tern leaned forward, voice sharp. Can all humans do this? Or is he unique? What of the risks? The chamber's tension became a living thing. Lyra met their gaze, unwavering. We do not know the full extent. That is why I propose a trial. Monitored synthesis, with volunteers, human and alien alike. No one will be forced. Elder Myros, who had not spoken until now, stood, his voice gravel and thunder. We will witness this union, Commander Lyra. You will oversee the trial. But if it fails, the consequences are yours to bear. The future of our people, and theirs, hangs in the balance. Lyra bowed her head in solemn acceptance. I accept. For all our futures. The chamber's crystalline chimes faded to uneasy silence as the council recessed. The path forward irrevocably changed. Far away, at Bastion Outpost, war raged. The sky above the battered human stronghold seethed with plasma fire, alien ships clawing at the battered planetary shield. Human defenders, some already touched by Evan's synthesis, moved with new precision, reflexes sharpened beyond anything human alone could achieve. Priya Singh crouched beside a defense turret, eyes wide as she watched Ramirez recalibrate the weapon's targeting array in seconds. This, this isn't possible, she whispered, awed by the speed and clarity of her own thoughts. It's Evan, Ramirez replied, grinning as sparks danced between his gloved hands and the alien interface. We're linked now. I can feel him. Overhead, Admiral Corrin's fleet swept in for the kill. The alien flagship, a vast blade of obsidian and gold, led the charge, cannons spitting death. Corrin's image appeared on human monitors, her voice cold and triumphant. Your resistance ends now. Surrender, and you will be spared. Evan stood at the heart of the outpost, surrounded by the synthesized defenders. He closed his eyes, channeling the psychic link he and Lyra had forged. The sensation was overwhelming. 1,000 minds, all burning with hope and terror, reaching for him. His voice echoed in their thoughts. Hold nothing back. Let me in. Suddenly, the synthesis spread, tendrils of energy weaving through the defenders. Muscles coiled, senses expanded. Ships in the hangar lifted off in unison, pilots and gunners moving with uncanny synchronicity. A shimmering network connected them all. Evan at the center, Lyra's presence anchoring him from afar. In orbit, the alien fleet reeled. Human vessels darted through the enemy formation, evading plasma bursts with impossible grace, their maneuvers unpredictable even to advanced targeting algorithms. The flagship's shields flickered under coordinated assault. Admiral Corrin's command crew scrambled. They're moving as one, an officer shouted, panic fracturing her discipline. They anticipate every strike. Evan focused, pushing the link further, deeper. He felt Ramirez at the helm, Priya in the medbay, Dr. Lee rerouting power to the shields. Each mind fed into the collective, each action magnified. The strain threatened to shatter him. His vision blurred, muscles spasmed, his bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically. Lyra's thoughts brushed his, urgent and loving. You are not alone. We share this burden. Evan drew strength from her, then from the collective will of every synthesized defender. The fleet became a living organism, united in purpose. At the climax, the defenders' ships surrounded the alien flagship, moving with a precision that defied physics and fate. Evan's consciousness surged, linking every mind. He spoke, not just aloud, but through every comm, every psychic channel, every ship in orbit. His image appeared on the alien flagship's screens, his voice a thunderous harmony. Join us, or face a species that has surpassed its limits. On the bridge, Admiral Corrin stared at the screen, disbelief warring with awe and fear. Her crew hesitated, hands hovering over controls. The effort nearly destroyed Evan. His body trembled, vision blackening at the edges, the psychic strain threatening to snap his mind apart. But the synthesized humans shared the agony, dividing it, transforming it into resolve. In that moment, the collective consciousness formed, something new, something neither human nor alien, but a union of both. All across the galaxy, alien commanders and human resistance leaders alike received the broadcast. The message was clear: unity or destruction. The old boundaries had fallen, and the future would be forged not in the crucible of war, but in the fire of transformation. As the Bastion outpost defenders cheered, Lyra rushed to Evan's side. She caught him as he faltered, bioluminescent hands cradling his face. Their eyes met, and through their bond, hope blossomed. The choice was now before the galaxy, a chance to evolve or to perish, clinging to the old divisions. The revolution had become something more, an invitation to a new destiny. Bastion outpost transformed before the galaxy's eyes. The battered fortifications and utilitarian corridors of the old resistance base gave way to a new architecture. Living structures that breathed, walls shifting to accommodate purpose and mood, crystalline energy conduits pulsing in harmony with the rhythm of life. Adaptive alloys stretched and reformed, guided by minds both human and alien, until every surface shimmered with the promise of possibility. In this new age, Bastion stood not as a monument to survival, but as a beacon of synthesis. Evan moved through the heart of it all, stable now in his hybrid form, a living bridge between species. He was taller and broader than he had been, bioluminescent lines spiraling over blue-green skin, eyes shining with intelligence and something deeper. When he placed his hand on a crystalline interface, the system responded with a pulse of recognition, opening encrypted files or redirecting power with the same ease as it responded to a spoken word. Plant roots intertwined with fiber optics beneath his touch. He had become a new node in the living network, able to interface with organic and technological systems alike. Lyra walked beside him, no longer entirely the alien commander she once was. Her mossy green skin was now traced with Evan's patterns, the bioluminescent filigree glowing in concert with his whenever they drew near. Her tail, sleek, expressive, tipped with new iridescent hues, curled in excitement as she swept into the council chamber, datapad in hand. She paused in the sunlit atrium, the gathered crowd watching her with anticipation. "The Council has approved full diplomatic exchange," she announced, her voice carrying the ring of new beginnings. 12 worlds will send delegates to Bastion. Her tail coiled around Evan's arm, a subtle gesture of intimacy and celebration. Evan's thoughts brushed hers, carrying both hope and caution. This experiment, he warned through their empathic link, must be carefully guided. A single misstep, a misunderstanding, could ripple through the new alliance. "We'll watch every step," Lyra sent back, reassurance and excitement entwined. This time, together. Across the system, teams of humans and aliens worked side by side, their efforts reshaping not only their stations and ships, but the very culture that had divided them. Not all chose transformation. Some preferred to remain as they were, purely human or unchanged alien, but all worked together. The rifts of war replaced by the labor of invention and discovery. Jonah Voss stood at a podium in a garden amphitheater, his voice steady and persuasive as he addressed a crowd of skeptics, both human and alien. "Synthesis doesn't erase who we are," he declared, gesturing to Priya Singh at his side. "It enhances it, strengthening our individuality and our well-being. I am still myself. Priya is still herself. But we are more connected, more alive." Priya smiled, her dark hair glowing with a faint halo of bioluminescence. "My empathy as a medic has never been stronger," she told the audience. "I can sense pain before it's spoken, and I can help in ways that were impossible before. No one is forced. But for those who choose it, the benefits are real." Elsewhere, artists and engineers, species mingling, laughter in a dozen languages, wove new wonders. Sculptors carved living stone with their minds, guided by a shared vision. Musicians played crystalline instruments that responded to emotion as much as touch, creating harmonies that had never existed before. Scientists from both sides collaborated, their discoveries feeding into the expanding network, sparking innovations that leapt across fields and disciplines. The psychic bond that Evan and Lyra had first forged in secrecy now became the template for something larger, a universal empathic network. At first, it linked only those who had undergone synthesis, but with time and careful study, Elder Myros and his council devised a method for anyone to participate, even if only temporarily. With each new mind added, language barriers crumbled. Prejudice faded in the shared light of thought and feeling. For the first time in living memory, the Directorate's halls rang with laughter and curiosity, not suspicion and fear. Elder Myros himself, scarred and wise, stepped forward in a council session. "This union is not the end of governance, but its renewal. he declared, his voice resonant. I will undergo the synthesis, and I urge others to follow, not to erase our differences, but to use them as the foundation for a new way of leading. The change was not without resistance. On the distant farming moons, some humans clung to the old ways, wary of any alien touch. Among the Directorate's older caste, a few elders grumbled that their traditions were being eroded. But the synthesis spread, not as a conquering force, but as an invitation. In time, even the doubters found themselves drawn to Bastion Outpost, curiosity overcoming fear. The outpost itself became a university of interspecies innovation. Delegates from a dozen worlds gathered beneath the living domes, sharing knowledge and culture, debating ethics and philosophy. Evan and Lyra presided over ceremonies, their presence a living testament to what had been won and what could still be lost. Young hybrids laughed in the gardens, their skin a tapestry of patterns and hues, their minds already fluent in the new empathic tongue. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Bastion's crystalline spires, Evan stood atop the council balcony. The night air shimmered with music and conversation, the city below alive with celebration. Lyra joined him, her hand slipping into his, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in harmony. "Did you ever think we'd come this far?" she asked, her voice soft but strong. Evan turned, searching her face. "Some nights, I thought we'd never make it out of the tunnels. But now, this feels like only the beginning." His gaze swept the horizon, where new ships arrived daily, their hulls gleaming with the mark of synthesis. Lyra's tail curled around his waist. "The great synthesis," she mused, a note of wonder in her tone. "We've redefined what it means to be sentient, to belong." As the network continued to grow, new species arrived, drawn by the promise of connection, by the freedom to remain themselves while sharing in the power of many. Conflict faded. Disputes were settled with words and shared understanding, not weapons. The old boundaries dissolved, replaced by the living web that now tied the galaxy together. Through it all, Evan and Lyra remained at the center, ageless and radiant, their bond the cornerstone of the new civilization. Where once their love had been forbidden, a secret to be hidden in shadow, it now shone as an example, a reminder that what was feared as monstrous might instead be the very thing that protected and united. The beast within had not destroyed, but transformed. In their union, the fabric of existence itself was rewoven, and the revolution that had begun with violence now echoed in laughter and light. The galaxy's story had changed forever, but as Evan and Lyra gazed out at the shimmering city and the stars beyond, they knew the true evolution had only just begun, written forever in the shared light of two hearts. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.